Hey everyone, welcome to Women Supporting Women Live. I'm Karen Yankovich and I'm here with Christine Gritmon, the
Hello.
amazing Christine Gritmon. And we are here every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern to chat with you about, I just love to introduce to you all the amazing women in my life that I know are really doing an amazing job supporting people in their community. And Christine, I'm just going to look up, Christine was on my podcast, and I just want to look up, I should have done this already, what episode it was.
Oh, good. And I'm sitting here on my phone trying to share this on my own LinkedIn.
I know, right? It's always so it was. I don't know. I'll find it. So, Christine, tell everybody a little bit about you. It was fun to have you on the podcast, but tell everybody a little bit about you and who you are and what you do and all that good stuff.
Sure. So I'm Christine Gritmon. And what I do is I basically empower small business. I've been told I need to find a better word than empower, but I empower small business owners to tell their own story online. And so what that often means is I teach them how to use social media themselves better. So I don't do it for them. I teach them how to do it. And what I'm moving into a bit more now is something that I've always done with them, which is to help tease out their brand, especially their personal brand, and to put themselves into their brands in a bigger way. It's something a lot of people are freaked out by, and they really don't have to be. So I work with people one-on-one and in groups to try to tease that out of them and get it out of their heads that it's somehow uncouth to promote yourself.
Oh, you know what? I want to talk about that. We're going to come back to that. But I mean, look at you. Your brand is red. At least that's what I can, from what I can see, right?
Yes, it is.
Your brand is red. Your hair is red. Your lips are red. Your background is red. I see you out there on social media going, "Who's got a red car I can borrow for a photo shoot?"
Yes.
So you don't have to have. It doesn't have to be complicated. I remember early on in my online marketing career, Jess Kupferman, who's a good friend of mine, she's the founder of She Podcast. She was like, your logo is your name in a font that you love. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. We tend to overcomplicate this stuff sometimes, right? And it doesn't have to be so complicated. It's more, I think, to me, it's more important that you get it out there. But tell me why you think brand is important and consistent branding is important.
Well, there have been studies that show that people require, X number of brand touches or encounters with your brand before they make a purchase decision. Now, those studies were initially done a long time ago when brand exposure meant things like newspaper ads, television commercials, walking by your shop. In the era of social media, they've actually updated the studies. I really need to get these numbers if I'm going to quote studies, but they've updated it. It requires so many more brand touches now to create a real picture in people's minds of our brands. And that includes us as people, just because there's so much noise out there with social media. Every brand has a platform. Every person has a platform. Every person is a brand. There's a lot. So we have an unprecedented amount of reach for our messaging, but we also have a crazy lot of noise to break through. And not only making sure that we're seen, but also making sure that we're seen by the right people and that we're memorable, so that when someone sees us for the 10th time, they know in their heads that this is the 10th piece of that puzzle, even if they don't consciously realize it, rather than feeling like we're starting from scratch, like they don't remember us. So it's if they haven't had those previous brand touches before. So that's ultimately why it matters.
And don't you feel like sometimes we as the entrepreneur don't realize sometimes that those brand touches are happening? Like we know it's happening. Like that's when people say to me, well, should I accept a connection request on LinkedIn from people I don't know? I'm like, yeah, that means that they know you, which means your digital marketing works. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't always mean that. Sometimes it's people that are trying to sell you or scam you or whatever. I get that. But what we're looking to do is get visibility and get people to know who we are. And our brand is touching people even when that's what we're doing. But then when it actually happens, sometimes we're like, wait, who are these people? Like, who cares? Right? Like that means your marketing is working, right? And your visibility is working.
Well, that brings to another point though, because the fact is, yes, it is good to be known in general. It's good that we're out there, but it's especially important to be known by the right people.
Yes.
I mean, I could have a huge following in a non-English speaking country and I can't help there. I don't really.
Oh, I completely agree.
People could just love my hair. So it's important to kind of be able to, if you're going to have exposure anyway, and you're going to have visibility and your image is out there, you don't have full control over where it goes, which means that you want to make sure that what you're putting out there is deliberately out there to resonate with the right people. The right people is key, because lots of people is great, but I don't know about you. I don't get paid by the person. I don't get paid by
the
views.
follower. Yeah, me either. How do we make that happen?
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. And I do agree with that visibility is not what we're shooting for here. It's getting clients, right? But at the same time, the visibility helps with the credibility, and the credibility helps with the client getting stuff.
Completely.
Right. That's so cool. That's so true. That's so true. And, it's so funny because there's so many pieces to this, but the reality is you don't have to have all the pieces. You can just take the pieces that you think are valuable to you, and then, make it simple. Make it simple. That's my goal.
That's why people think it's hard. That's why people don't do it. They don't take advantage of these opportunities to be seen and be heard, because there are so many of them, and they feel like, oh, I have to do all of this stuff. I'm just going to go hide under the covers and not deal with any of it.
Right.
It's more effective to take the thing that resonates with you, or maybe that will resonate with your target audience. But the fact is, if you hate it, it's not going to happen. So figure out the thing that you don't hate doing.
That's so true.
Yeah, figure out the thing you don't hate doing, the platform you don't hate being on, where your people are. Get really good at that, and then you can always add on more. But doing everything half-assed is not necessary. Get good at the things that actually matter to you.
That is so true. And it's interesting, Christine, because I actually tell people, and this is maybe a little controversial, but I don't ever really care about that. I think that sometimes, of course you want to be places where your people are, right? But at the same time, you also want to be places that you like to be. So to me, I almost put that above where your people are, because we're not looking for 100 people. We can always find 1 or 2 people, which is what we're looking for, our next client on whatever platform you like to be on. So a lot of people be where your clients are. I'm like, yeah, I want to be where I want to be, right? I am not a TikTok person, and I don't care if you tell me all my people are on TikTok. I have been messing with it. When I say messing with it, I mean watching videos. Yeah. Lately, I've watched a couple of videos there, and I'm just I just don't see this ever being a part of what I do, and that's okay. But if somebody says to me, that's where your people are, you're leaving money on the table, I'd be like, okay, it's safe there. I can find people where I like to hang out.
Well, what's important is that having a presence and having a good presence are not the same thing. Right. So I technically have a TikTok, but it's just pictures of my family doing puzzles. It's not professional at all. It has nothing to do with my business.
Right.
And, so I could be on TikTok and be doing hardly anything and get followers there who are saying, what the heck is this person up to? And, then lose those followers or have them just be annoyed. You're creating an impression no matter what. Right. Via action or inaction. Right. And if the thing that you do is you technically join a platform, but then you don't do anything with it, that speaks volumes. That says something about how you're showing up. So it's worth it to show up where you're going to show up and really be there. Right. I do have some clients, very few, but I have a few clients who don't like certain platforms. I have a couple clients who do not like Facebook. They don't want to spend time there. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like they really can skip Facebook given what they do, but what we do there is we just don't make a very in-depth Facebook strategy for them. We set up their profiles nice and strong so that people can get all the information that they need. We have an autoresponder on the instant messaging telling people to call them or email them. Mm-hmm. I do make them check in occasionally just to see if anyone's engaged with any of their stuff so that they can comment back. But for the most part, I never, ever recommend just auto-posting your Instagram stuff to your Facebook. But for them, honestly, that's kind of all they need, as long as I can get them to really be on board with building their Instagram strategy. Because sometimes you do need a presence, but I mean, generally speaking, there's people in enough places at this point that it's much better to just show up in the places where you'll represent yourself well and consistently.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I love that. I love that. So how do you support people? Like, I know that when we first met, you were doing a lot of work with local businesses,
Yep.
right? Now you've shifted a little bit to helping people with their brands. Tell us a little bit about that.
So 4 years ago, when I started Christine Gritmon Inc., I was done for you social. And in fact, I wanted to specialize in restaurants. I knew I wanted to specialize in small businesses. That also was local businesses. And that was also most specifically restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And after a little while, I got what I thought I wanted. I had a couple of my very favorite places around as clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it was unsustainable. And it was certainly unscalable. Because in order to serve these clients well in the way that I wanted to, I would only be able to have a few clients at a time. And because I was working with small businesses, I didn't want to raise my prices to the point where I could afford to only have a few clients at a time because I liked the small.
Right.
But if you're working with small businesses, you need volume.
I had the exact same beginning to my business, the exact same beginning. And people would say to me all the time, how do you, I'm starting this business. What do I need to do? I'm like, you need to double your prices. They're like, what? I'm like, I don't even need to know what they are, but I know that to do a good job, people be like, well, they just want one Facebook post a week. I'm like, oh, well, then they should just throw their money out the window because that's not going to be an effective strategy. So as soon as you start like nickel and diming, but then when you are charging what you need to charge, then they're like, well, what are my results? And so it just got unsustainable. Like you said, it was unsustainable. I admire people that are doing it now because you do really need to have it. It's hard to do it in a personalized way. It really is. Unless you have a serious budget for it.
And in addition to that, the personalized way, I really honestly did feel like they could probably just do it better if I taught them how, because here's the thing, in order for them to have me make their content, we had to set up a time that worked for them, that worked for me. They had to set stuff up. I had to take a bunch of pictures. I had to figure out when I was going to use what, run through content so fast that I needed more like immediately. Yeah. Whereas they're there. They're in their business day in, day out. If they're a restaurant, they're there when the chef is working on the special. They're there when the drinks are getting mixed. They're there when all these things are happening. So teaching them how to recognize those moments of content and to leverage them became an interest to me. And I certainly moved beyond just restaurants very quickly. Right. Yeah, by I think the 1 year mark, I'd already moved on from that. And so I started teaching people, training people how to do it themselves better. And at some point, instead of kind of reinventing the wheel with every client quote, I got into 2 very clear packages. Now I have 3, but 2 very clear packages where I was like, we do it this way or we do it this way. And it's been better than ever because the fact is I'm able to get back to people faster. They have the trust that I know what they need because clearly I know what they need because that's how I made the packages come together. Right. And so it's been a really good evolution. I've been really happy about it. The obvious next step would be online courses. So I am planning on getting into that so I can move from the one-to-one to more one-to-many work. In fact, I'm working on a course right now that's not ready yet, but I'm working on a course that'll probably be actually step 1 to working with me. People can either buy the course freestanding and have the cost of the course applied to the cost of working one-on-one with me. Or if people are working one-on-one with me, I'll say, okay, here, do this first so we can really hit the ground running. Yeah. And, I'll hopefully grow the whole coursework thing from there. But now where I'm at right now is I feel really good about what I do. I feel really good about how I help people. I just want to help more people without there being more.
Right. I love that. I love that. And if you guys can hear any noise in the background, right behind me is my garage, and there's a guy in there with a it sounds like a drill or something. So
we had jackhammers in our yard on Friday, so I'm glad that's not going on right now here.
So don't worry about that. It's just, this is what this is the work from home life, guys.
Suburban problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's so cool. That's so cool. And Christine, I hear what you're saying. I remember being in a restaurant one time, and because I do social media, when restaurants say like our Facebook page, I like their Facebook. I love that they're asking me to do that, right?
Yes.
So I like their Facebook page, and then like a week or two later, I see Monday morning, and they posted all their specials for the week on Monday morning on one big post, and I'm like, oh my god. So I like the next time I went there, I asked him. I literally was that person. I'm like, who does your social media? Are they here? And he's like, yeah. So they came out, and I go, do you know you can schedule this? He's like, what do you mean? He just didn't know, right? I'm like, schedule these. Like if you have a chocolate martini on special for Wednesdays, I want that to pop in my Facebook feed at 4:30 when I'm at work, and I'm like, oh my god, I've had a long day.
Earlier. No, it's got to be
earlier. Okay.
Yeah, that was another thing that I struggled with, because with the restaurants, a lot of times they literally wouldn't know what the special was until shortly before opening that evening, and they hadn't made it yet until someone ordered it. So I was getting texts at like 7 at night being like, oh, post tonight's special.
Oh yeah. No, I meant like, yeah, I agree with that. But I think when you're sitting there, like you're ready to leave work and you're like, I'm too tired to make dinner. And then you call your spouse and you're like, did you know Luigi's has penne primavera for specials?
Yes, you're right.
Like that little tweak changed everything.
I had fun with ads with that once. This was great. So ads, it's better because you can absolutely control when it appears on the feed. Whereas with an organic post, you put it out and then the algorithm does whatever it wants to do with it. I might see that Wednesday chocolate martini on Saturday night. Right. So with ads, it was great. I worked with with a restaurant actually, where they were near a train station, a commuter train station here in the suburbs. And they wanted to get, first of all, they wanted to get more commuter business, but they also wanted to get more lunch business. They were near a Japanese owned company. So I did two types of ads for them. First, to get the commuters, I would run ads during commuter hours on mobile, but then on desktop in the New York City area during the workday, because the commuters were commuting to New York City. So I was like, all right, so they can either see this during the workday on their desktop computer, or they can see it on mobile while they're on the train.
On the train, right. Yeah. That's a great idea.
And then for the company that was near them that they wanted to up their lunch business, it was a Japanese-owned company. There were a lot of Japanese people there. So I said, okay, very close radius to the restaurant. I said people who speak English and people who speak Japanese. And it worked. They got it. The more targeted you can be within reason, the better your results are going to be with something like that. But I'm a strong believer in organic social, but when it comes to reaching people at the right times in the right places, you can go very far with a very small amount of money if you know what you want.
I agree. I love that. So was today the grand opening or the grand celebration of your new Twitter chat?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. So as I kind of mentioned before, I've been getting more into personal branding. It's something that I've always kind of gotten, and it's something that I've always helped people with. And so I decided starting this fall, I always take August off to kind of have a think and a recalibration. And I decided to use my August to plan making a bigger push into the personal branding realm starting today, September. And so I have a lot of things going on this week. But one of them was I now have a weekly Twitter chat on Tuesdays at noon Eastern called Chat About Brand. And it's sort of a companion piece to my Friday live interview show on Facebook, which is Let's Talk About Brand. So talk about brand on Fridays, chat about brand on Tuesdays. It works.
Awesome.
And so the Twitter chat does not have a guest. Some Twitter chats have guests. I do not have a guest on the Tuesday Twitter chat, but the topic of the Tuesday chat is always related to what I'm talking about with my guest on the Friday live stream. And the last question of the chat is always going to be suggesting questions for me to ask on my Friday live stream. And I am having a sponsored giveaway every single week. It's different every week. And so basically I get two of it. I get one to give away to someone during the live Twitter chat. The chat starts at noon. So we do the drawing at 12:55. And then I'm going to have one to give away during the Friday show. The Friday show is only half an hour. So that is going to be drawn like 12:25. But Yeah.
Cool. That's cool.
So
That's so
hopefully they
fun.
feed into each other nicely. We'll see.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're getting creative with it and creative with, because I love Twitter too. And Twitter's engagement has changed a lot in the last couple of years. And
Like
I frankly,
crazy.
I'm using Twitter more now personally, not really all that personal, but I do share my podcasts and things like that on there, and I tag the guests and I try to have it, but it's definitely it's very different than it was a few years ago.
Yes.
So Twitter strategy has changed a lot, and I love Twitter, but it's changed a lot.
Twitter was my least favorite of the major platforms for a long time. I
Really?
just didn't get it. And over the years, my Twitter following, my Twitter relationships, my Twitter engagement, it got a lot stronger. One interesting thing to me, though, is that I had my two audiences, right? I had my small business owners who aren't that into social media, and none of them are on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
If they're anywhere, they're on Facebook, maybe Instagram.
Right.
And then I had my audience of my peers. So people I could collaborate with, people I could learn from, people who maybe would lead to other opportunities, but still they weren't the people paying me, but they were the people I was killing it with. I was getting opportunities to speak. I was, making friends. I was, it was a good place for me. But I didn't know how to reconcile those two things. I was like, I'm putting all this energy and getting all these results in the thing that doesn't actually make me money, which is another reason why I'm doing more personal branding. A lot of marketers don't know how to market themselves, so now I can help them. But I finally decided, rather than saying, I resent that my Twitter is doing well because Facebook is what I want to be doing well, I'm just kind of saying, you know what? If my Twitter is doing well, let's see where this goes, and I have to say, since sort of succumbing to that and accepting the fact that Twitter is where I'm getting known and Facebook, whatever, it's really interesting, Karen. I have fans now who I don't know. And that's really new to me.
That's amazing.
And it's been very interesting. And I'm trying to really get my arms around it and make sure that I'm engaging back with people and that I'm aware of who these people are. I'm even starting to connect with some of my Twitter followers on other networks.
That had to have happened 5 years ago. You just didn't know it. You've always had fans that you don't know. But now,
but now they're showing up. I don't have lurkers. This is what I mean. It's a difference, because before I always had lurkers. And this year, 2020, the pandemic, this whole situation really brought the lurkers out of the woodwork, because I had a lot of longtime listener, first time caller people getting in touch saying, help me save my business. And I was like, I didn't know that you knew what I was up to. I didn't know you knew who I was, but so I had lurkers, but now I have really engaged, active, brilliant people who know who I am. And I'm like, all right, I will take it. And I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that I step it up a notch so that I can be of value to this honestly better audience that I'm getting. I'm getting an audience that brings value back to me in multiple ways. And so it's making me want to bring it a little harder. And I'm really liking this. I'm liking this new dynamic that's in play with me.
And I love that Twitter is conversational. Like you can really talk to people and really get, have conversations with people. I love Twitter. Used to be, like 5 years ago, Twitter was the #1 source of traffic to my website. And that's not, it was. It's not anymore. But because it used to be, you're expected to show up more personally now, which I think is a good thing. I'm not getting you have to show up more personally.
Before it could be link.
I used to, for every podcast episode we do, we would have like 3 tweets written, and then we would just rotate those tweets and cues out to Twitter, and that would drive traffic to my website and my podcast and all that other stuff. And I still do that, but I've dialed it way back. Back. Instead of it going out like every 2 hours, it's going out like 2 or 3 times a day, because I think it's still good to do that, because I listen, I have people like you on my show and I want to promote that. And what's interesting, what I didn't realize about my podcast, and I do believe it's my Twitter strategy that has a lot to do with this. What I didn't realize was going to happen when I started my podcast was that I have listened to every single episode every single month. And I did not expect that to happen. Like, when you do a blog, you don't know like a year from now. Like you guys, if you're seeing at the bottom, you were episode 128. We're at like 135 right now. So that means 2 years. And which has made me have to rethink my podcast strategy. Like I now am really clear when I send people to a link that it's a link that will be alive forever. Right? Like because I didn't realize people are going to be listening to these shows 2 years later. But a lot of that has to do with Twitter. So I do think people listen and share, and so I think there's a lot of great strategies for Twitter, but it has definitely changed. But I also think that it's a place where you can really establish some credibility because if you're active there and you can grow your followers there. Like any live event I go to, I'm always connecting, of course, to people on LinkedIn, but I tweet it. I tweet pictures of the people on stage, and I link to them, and I'm always looking, because I think that I want them to say, who's this person that's been tweeting? And it gets my name in front of the speakers.
This
right?
is how we met.
That's exactly how we met. Christine was verified on Twitter, and I was like, who's this chick verified on Twitter that's tweeting about me through this whole conference, right?
I'm blowing up the boards. I was monopolizing the whole darn hashtag.
It was so fun, right? It was fun. But that's how and I've met a lot of fun people on Twitter, like you and there's a few other people. So I love that about Twitter. But at the end of the day, it is a very different dynamic, I think, than some of the other platforms. And you're right, local businesses, it's not as much the place for local businesses as maybe Instagram or Facebook.
No, I mean, they can succeed on it. Anyone can succeed on any platform as far as I'm concerned. Depends on what they bring to it. But I agree with you there. I feel like Facebook is where a lot of locally based conversations happen. Instagram is where a lot of local influence happens. I feel like Twitter, it's so global. That I feel like that's one of the things I love about it, but it's also makes it a little bit trickier because there are fewer gates. It's not so gated. Facebook, you have to be friends with somebody or like a page or join a group or something like that. So it's a bit gated. It's public, but it's gated. Some of it is not public. Instagram, similar situation. I mean, you're seeing someone because you go there. But Twitter, I feel like I've heard it described as the fire hose. I think Brian Fanzo is the one who I heard describe it as just this fire hose of information. And so it's very easy to kind of get lost there. But it also, if you find your people, if you find the right conversations to have on Twitter, that's part of why it can be so incredibly valuable. But you're right that it's changed, and the old way of just being like, all right, well, we'll recycle the same handful of tweets with a link on them. It's not going to work anymore. The notification setting. Your notifications are the most powerful thing on Twitter. Absolutely. If you get in the habit of replying to your notifications.
I can't turn my notifications on Twitter on. I can't do it.
Oh, God, I would die.
Okay, yeah.
I just, when I pop onto Twitter, I make sure to go through all my notifications. I care about my notifications so much more than I care about my feed.
I agree.
People want to talk about
it. Yeah. I can't turn my Twitter on. My phone would blow up, but I love it. But I want to just wrap this, but I do want to mention one thing that you mentioned earlier. So when you were saying that early on, where your peers were there, and that was places where you would be able to get, maybe speaking engagements and things like that. That's amazing. Like because that leads to influence, which leads to clients, right? Yes. And that to me, so if I could just, you knew this was coming, right? If I could tie that in with LinkedIn, if you have a great LinkedIn profile and then you're meeting people on Twitter and then they, and then you're driving them to LinkedIn and they can see you have some credibility based on that. Twitter's a great way to build relationships to get you to those things. Brian Fanzo actually I interviewed him for my podcast, and he had some great things to say. And one of the things he talked about was, if you want to speak at a conference, look for conferences that you want to speak at 2 years from now. And tweet the hell out of that conference this year. You know what I mean? And connect with those people on LinkedIn this year and play the long game for those, and he's probably getting, $20,000 a speaking engagement now, if not more in some cases. So he's playing the long game to get those opportunities, and he's using Twitter and LinkedIn to do that. So, and because they have hashtags, like especially virtual events now, they have a hashtag. Use the hashtag. And I know I'm preaching to the choir when I'm telling you this, because nobody does this except Brian Fanzo. Maybe you guys might go nose to nose on conferences on who tweets more, but use that conference hashtag, because it gets you known by the conference organizers, and that helps you get credibility and helps your entree into maybe being a speaker at that event at some point.
That has allowed me, that exact formula basically has really gotten me everywhere. I gotta say, it has done so much for me in terms of visibility, in terms of giving first, for sure. Which is, you're shouting someone else out without asking them for anything.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
Yep.
And it's getting in front of the right people. It's getting in front of the right people who are having the right conversations, because they're interested in the same event you're interested in.
Yep. So the title of the podcast that we titled, that you were on, which was episode 128, which we're scrolling all across the bottom, was Getting Creative with Online Marketing. And that is such a great way to kind of wrap this conversation, because that is such a great creative way, and it's authentic and it's supportive, and honestly, the long game is where the money is, right? If you can support yourself in the meantime, we can get you quick wins, believe me, but don't forget about the long game.
The long game builds legitimacy.
It does.
Builds legitimacy. It builds trust. Anything you can maintain for years, the longer you maintain a certain image, the less likely it is that it was fake to begin with, because who can do that? Who can play a role for that length of time? Who even wants to? Right. And the sooner you start playing the long game, the sooner those long games start playing it out. And then they're consistent. Snowball.
Right. So,
the acceleration rate of being in front of the right people, being in the right conversations, presenting the right type of value, it really does accelerate like crazy.
Yeah. All right. So those of you watching this on the replay, because for some reason there wasn't a ton of people here live today, leave your questions for Christine or me. We will get back to you. Tag her on LinkedIn, tag in the Facebook group, wherever you're watching this, and we will get back to you. Christine, thanks so much for being here today. This was such a fun conversation to have.
Yes.
And it was good to catch up with you. All right. Take care, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.